A show created by the fans, for the fans. We are your home for Ohio State football coverage all year long. The Scarlet and Gray Podcast, a Network 216 production. Live weekdays on the Network 216 YouTube channel. Send us all your questions and comments on Twitter at @VSG_podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Tyler Johnson, Jordan Dalton, and Nick Leisure.
Good evening, Buckeye Nation, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Scarlet and Gray Podcast. I am Tyler Johnson, this evening joined by Mr. Jordan Dalton because Nick Leisure is currently living it up in Disney World. But JD, anyway, how you doing tonight, my man?
I'm doing well. A little bit tired, but excited to talk some football and learn about a Big Ten team we're not super familiar with. So I think it'll be a good informational podcast for a lot of Big Ten fans and Ohio State fans as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And of course, there is plenty to talk about tonight. And we're going to talk a little bit of Rutgers football. Before we get to our guests, as a reminder, every time we're on, guys, drop a like onto that video tonight and subscribe if you are brand new to the channel. We are on the push for 3,000 subscribers. We're getting close. I mean, we are almost 400 away. We're getting closer to that goal. Really want to get there before the start of this college football season. We can do it. Just need your help. It's completely free to subscribe, completely free to like that video, which helps the algorithm grow, and we really would appreciate that support. But also, the Scarlet and Gray Podcast Network 216 is proud to be a partner of Homage Athletic Apparel. Right now, if you go to homage.com and you are a brand new customer, you can get 15% off your first order. All you have to do, type in your email address, subscribe to their updates, and 15% off your first order on homage.com. There's no better place for vintage athletic apparel. And tell them that the Scarlet and Gray Podcast sent you. They're going to be coming out with a lot of new Ohio State gear when we get closer to the season. They dropped a brand new Columbus Crew. If you're a fan of Major League Soccer, dropped a brand new Columbus Crew line not too long ago, so make sure you go check it out. That's homage.com. And we're going to go ahead and not waste any more time. We're going to bring in our guest this evening. We are joined by Richie O'Leary. He covers Rutgers football for Rivals.com. Richie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, man. I'm not in Disney World like your other buddy, but I'm just sitting here in Jersey, some nice weather. So I'm excited for this college football season, man.
Yeah, we are too. I mean, and there is a lot to talk about on the Rutgers side of things. Right now, it seems Rutgers has a quarterback battle going on. Of course, they bring back Gavin Wimstad. Wimstad. And they bring in from Minnesota. I'm going to butcher this name, but I'm going to just try my best. They bring in from Minnesota Ethan Kaliakmanis to compete with him for the quarterback job. So what I want to ask you is, Richie, this quarterback battle that's going on, why do you think Greg Schiano brought in Ethan to compete for this starting job? Because Gavin did show some potential last year for Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely showed flashes. He had 11 rushing touchdowns. Most of those were just tush pushes for the most part, I should say. He had 500 rushing yards. He led them to their first bowl victory since I think it was 2016, something like that, under Kyle Flood back then. But he was by far the most inaccurate quarterback in all of college football. There's no question about it. 47% completion percentage is just inexcusable in my eyes, at least, in most eyes of college football. Somehow he pulled off wins, though. So I think you have to bring in some serious competition for him. And they did just that. They brought in a Big Ten quality starter in Ethan Kaliakmanis. That's the way to pronounce it technically. But it's going to be interesting because he wasn't much higher on that completion percentage last year for Minnesota, but he did put up better numbers. I do think he's the more accurate quarterback. But end of the day, they're going to let those two battle it out. And it's not like they're going to have to throw him much either. They have Kyle Monangai back there, the Big Ten's leading rusher. So they're probably just going to run it a ton, but they need someone in there that can just hit a 10-yard check down.
Mm-hmm. So what did real quick, JD, I just wanted to follow up on the quarterbacks. What were your thoughts when Ethan was the quarterback that they went for? Out of all the guys that they potentially could have inquired about, what were your thoughts when he was the guy that they ended up landing?
I thought they could have aimed a little bit higher, but the fact that Athan had connections to offensive coordinator Kirk Shiraka, Rutgers OC Kirk Shiraka actually recruited Athan to Minnesota, had Athan fill in, I think it was in 2022 when Tanner Morgan went down for a couple games. So there's a lot of familiarity there. It makes sense to just get a guy that already knows your offense too, so you don't really have to reteach him a lot of things. Now, don't get me wrong, these offenses change every single year. So, of course, there's going to be little different wordings, different techniques, and just different schemes in general. But bringing in a guy that has familiarity with the offense is probably the biggest thing. And Kirk trusts him. And honestly, after what Kirk did to the offense this past season compared to what they had in 2022, I got to trust the guy at this point.
Yeah. So going off of that, so they brought in Athan. Did they bring anybody else in the transfer portal that you guys are excited about offensively?
Yeah, so Dymere Miller, the leading receiver in all of FCS, out of Monmouth, which is probably about 30, 40 minutes from Rutgers. So it kind of made sense. Everything just added up there, connections-wise, hometown-wise. They also brought in Nassim Brantley. Technically, he was with the program last year, but due to NCAA transfer issues, he was not able to play at all last season, so he had to sit out the entire year. He's coming in from Western Illinois, where I think he had like 700-800 yards with them. One of those games at Western Illinois, he put up, I think it was 80 or 90 receiving yards and a touchdown against Minnesota. So there's a little familiarity there too, as Kirk was able to see him during his time in Minnesota. But yeah, on offense, it's just those two right now. They didn't really bring in anyone else. They returned a bunch of guys right now. So I do think they're not done yet with the roster. I think there'll be some tinkering after spring ball ends because the portal window, I think it actually opens next week. So yeah, there'll be a little more tinkering between they want an offensive lineman and they want a tight end, but for the most part, everything else is kind of it's a heavy return on this team from last season.
Awesome.
And you mentioned bringing players back. No bigger player to bring back than Kyle Mangani, and I know I'm mispronouncing that name too, so I apologize. But bringing him back, was that a surprise to you? I mean, he had a great year for Rutgers, one of the better backs, and I said this when they were playing Ohio State, and he completely gashed us left and right. I think he's more the more underrated players in the Big Ten, and someone that a lot of people just really forgot about because, well, this guy plays at Rutgers, so you just really kind of forget he's there. Were you surprised that he came back?
Yeah, for a couple reasons. Number one, because it's as a running back, if you're going to make the league, you probably go as soon as you get that opportunity. I don't think you can waste any time nowadays. I mean, look at Isaiah Pacheco, a former Rutgers guy. He's probably not going to get a great contract because he spent 5 years or 4 years in college, so it kind of hurt him a little bit. These guys last, 3-4 years in the league before they're kind of done. Yeah. And I think when you have a season like that, you lead the entire Big Ten conference. Like you said, he put up some good numbers against good teams like Ohio State and some others, but I was a little shocked he came back. But with the way NIL works and all that stuff now, it kind of makes a little bit of sense because now you can make at least close to NFL money, if not more than NFL money in some cases. So yeah, it was a little shocking, but you are right. I don't think he gets enough respect. I think he does get a little bit disrespected because he is at Rutgers. But he put up great numbers last season. If he replicates those numbers again this season, I think a lot of people are going to be talking about him, especially with like guys like Blake Corum being gone. I think he has a really good shot of leading the Big Ten in rushing again.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And who are some players on Rutgers on this roster? Like we know about Kyle. Who are some other players though that just Buckeye fans or Big Ten fans in general should just really keep an eye on this year?
Yeah, I'd say Dymere Miller, who I mentioned before, the Monmouth transfer, especially on offense. He's going to be that star receiver for them, or wide receiver one at least, whatever you want to call it. The guy put up I want to say it was 1,200, 1,300 yards at Monmouth last year. And I know it's not going to translate perfectly. So what I like to do for a guy like an FCS to an FBS level, probably take off say 400 yards. Even if he puts up those numbers in this offense that isn't very pass happy for the most part, would be huge for Rutgers. I think he's a big deep ball threat too. Offensively, it's going to be a lot of the run game. I think that bringing back Sam Brown missed some time this past season with a foot injury. He missed some time his freshman year, but 2 years ago with a foot injury. But he's starting to show glimpses of that burst he had in year one. You saw glimpses of that against Miami in the Pinstripe Bowl. And if he could get just fully healthy, I think that 1-2 punch between Monangai and Brown could be like lethal.
JD, do you have any final questions?
Not about the roster, more so about the schedule that you guys have this season.
Mhm.
So Ohio State, we only got one team from the Pac-12 transfer. You guys seem to have – you guys have three, I believe, Washington,
Yep.
USC, and UCLA.
Mhm.
How do Rutgers fans feel about that? And do you think that there's some excitement with those new teams coming in?
Yeah, I mean, they're very, very excited for the sole fact that this season actually the original schedule that when it came out for 2024, it was essentially Rutgers facing the Big Ten East again, minus I think they swapped Washington for Indiana. So it's like, what the hell? Like, it's just as bad. But no, the new one they love for the sole fact that there's no Michigan, there's no Penn State, and there's no Ohio State.
Yeah.
So those are, I hate to say it, but they're 3 guaranteed losses almost every year. So now you flip-flop those with guys who have UCLA with a new staff, USC with a new quarterback, Washington with a new staff and a new quarterback and a new team essentially. And then sprinkle in some Big Ten West opponents, and they are very excited. I know some people have mentioned, like, I don't know if you guys follow Parker Fleming, Stats of War on Twitter. Very in depth with like his over-under stuff. He just posted yesterday. I think he had Rutgers as the 4th most wins projected in the Big Ten. They're projected at 8. I think the over-under is 8 right now. I really think it's very possible based on this schedule. Now you get Howard, Akron as out of conference, whatever. It is what it is. Virginia Tech's the tough one. I think that's the litmus test, and that's game number 3. So we'll see what happens there. And then after that, like I said, there's 2 new staffs at least, a couple new quarterbacks throughout the Big Ten. You don't have to face that gauntlet that you face every year as being in the Big Ten East previously. So I think 8 wins is very doable, if knock on wood, if not more.
Yeah,
that was actually great. That was gonna be my final question, because like we always like to end with that, like what your projections are for the team. Even though again we're far out, the transfer portal, there's still a lot to be decided there. But what has Greg Schiano done to turn this program around? It seems like Greg Schiano and Rutgers, when he comes back, when he's there, this program is just. There's a different buzz to it. There's more energy. What has he done to really rejuvenate this program?
It starts with culture, number one. When Chris Ash was in charge, there was just a bunch of guys getting in trouble with this and that off the field. This guy got kicked off with academics. This guy was smoking too much pot. And it's just like these guys are just they can't control themselves. And you honestly, at the end of the day, you have to create a culture. And it starts with just getting guys to buy in, guys that love football more than anything. He preaches that all the time. He says, I want guys that love football, not like football. And I get it now. At first, I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, coach speak, whatever. But now I kind of get it a little more, because you get guys that just like football. They're just there just to be there because it's fun. It's college, whatever. You get the Cardell Jones ones. I'm not going to school. I'm going to play football. Yeah, no, I think him and he's a New Jersey guy through and through. He knows how New Jersey works. He knows how it operates. And it's just culture and defense at the end of the day. Now, his offenses obviously need some work still. And that's always going to be the way under Greg. It's always going to be defense first. But I think once you build up that defense, you saw what he did last year. They got 7 wins. And I think it was 4.5 was over under. Yep. This year, now they're jumping up to 8 over under. So who knows? And we'll see what can happen this year. But yeah, it starts with culture.
Well, Richie, we really appreciate you joining us this evening. Before we let you go, of course, please let everyone know where they can find all your Rutgers content at.
Yeah, on Twitter at Rivals Richie. Very sarcastic on there, so be careful with that follow. But you could also follow us at Rutgers Rivals if you want some more Rutgers info. We're also on YouTube at Rutgers Football 1. Open book of anything Rutgers related. If you guys ever have questions about Rutgers, I know they're not playing each other this year, but feel free. My DMs are open, and shoot me a question. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Richie. We really appreciate your time. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you. Yep, anytime. That was Richie O'Leary with Rivals.com covering Rutgers football. JD, we're going to transition a little bit here just because there are some things we want to talk about here before. Sure. It's a big week, obviously, with the spring game, but there was a huge piece of news. Figure we discuss just for a few minutes. Not really, I guess, that it's a huge surprise, but Dalen Hayden is going to be entering the transfer portal, he has announced. So
He's gone. He recently, what's funny is 5 days ago, he met with the media and said he was staying. That was interesting. But anyway, he is entering the transfer portal. First off, what are your initial thoughts on this? I know on my side of things, I really still just can't believe, and it's not just Ryan Day, the entire offensive coaching staff, the way they handled his situation last year, redshirting him when he was the second best back on this team, just will forever bother me. But
yeah,
what are your initial
I mean,
thoughts?
we went back and forth on this show talking about it because we felt like he was the second best back and he should be getting touches. And this is where the transfer portal is kind of coming back to bite Ohio State because he plays last year. We probably don't get Judkins, and he's probably still on the roster. So there's a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
And something I picked up on, like you said, it wasn't a surprising thing because we kind of saw the writing on the wall with Judkins coming in. He's not going to get as much playing time this year. We said, like, really the only opportunity he would have to see the field is if there's an injury, and you never want, that to happen. But just the way it was playing out, it didn't look like he was going to get touches. But Ryan Day even called him out in spring practices, saying that he was doing great. He was one of the players that Ryan Day was really happy with during spring practice. So the fact that he left, it almost seems like Ryan Day saying that he kind of knew a little bit that there was the writing on the wall. Like, we need to try to keep this guy around, and that's why he made that public comment.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point. I mean, you're not getting Judkins if Dalen Hayden takes the step forward last year that we really thought he ended up could having. And then on top of that, what's crazy is time's a flat circle. I mean, Dalen Hayden was a higher rated recruit than Judkins. Judkins turns out with the playing time to become, at least for right now, the better player. Really wish Dalen Hayden all the best, truly. I mean, he's going to go somewhere. He's going to start probably, and he's going to be a very good football player. He'll probably end up in the NFL at some point because I do think he's that talented. I think the biggest thing, tell me before we move on from Dalen Hayden, you say the biggest thing that kept him off the field, you think, was just his lack of pass protection? Because that is the one thing that it sounds like he has been very bad at. Is blocking.
I don't think that's the reason he didn't see the field last year. I think the reason he didn't see the field was seniority for Mayan Williams, for Chip Trayanum. I truly believe they were like, in their mind, we can redshirt this guy and we can still get a year or two out of him if we redshirt him. Because there's no reason to redshirt him if you don't think he's sticking around. And they felt like Travion, Mayan, and Chip could carry that load, and then they would have, Hayden to be the backup this season. And that's just not the way things shook out, and it's unfortunate because, like you said, his freshman year, when he got to see the field, he was phenomenal. He really had a couple games where he sparked and he looked the part. He looked like a Buckeye. He was fast. He could hit the hole. He had a lot, and he had a lot of explosiveness, which we were lacking because of Travion's injuries and Chip's. Or Chip, I guess, was kind of like in between explosive but yeah, when Travion and mine were both hurt, we brought Hayden in, and he was explosive and he was hitting the hole, and it was something the offense was missing 2 years ago. So yeah, I wish him all the best, but I'm not super surprised.
Yeah, I'm not either. But the way it works, I mean, it's just the college football in a nutshell right now. If someone's going to offer you money, man, go get your money, and you're going to get the opportunity to start. It just makes a lot of sense. But another big piece of news that happened this week, I'm bringing it up for a reason. Julian's saying the true freshman quarterback lost his black stripe. Now, why is this significant? Who cares if a player loses their black stripe? He lost it faster than any freshman quarterback at Ohio State since Urban Meyer started the black stripe tradition. Now, some of those, of course, a decent amount were early enrollees. A couple were not. Joe Burrow was not, I don't believe. CJ Stroud, I don't think was. But Ohio State still had some top-ranked recruits come through at quarterback and Julian Sayin lost the black stripe before the spring game, which no other freshman quarterback has. The question I ask for you with Julian Sayin, because this is a topic right now, there have been reports that Will Howard is not looking great, okay? Like he's not, just struggling a little bit. Devin Brown's looking good, but we really, at the end of the day, we don't know. We're not there. If Julian's saying, this is a huge if, okay, and I put it on our Twitter page at the SG_podcast. If Julian's saying, because there have been reports that he is the best passer of the football on the team, if Julian's saying truly is the best overall passer, the most accurate, should Julian Sayin be the starting quarterback as a true freshman? If he is really, if the reports are true and he is as good as what they are saying, should they just start Julian Sayin?
Yeah, TJ, we talked about this, and I'm so glad you asked this question. So Will Howard, we brought him in. He's big-time transfer, rumored to get, a pretty good amount of money in NIL to come in and transfer. I imagine it was kind of the same situation with Julian, because not only is he coming in after Will Howard, but he's coming into a QB room where Devin Brown, Lincoln Kienholz, and Aaron Nolan, a quarterback in his same class, all pretty highly touted coming out of high school, are in this room. So he's coming into a room with 4 other guys that are competing for this job. And so, rumor mill, everything, people just automatically assume Will Howard's the guy, and then we're going to kind of see. Now, all of a sudden, the narrative's kind of flipped. It's like Julian Sayin seems to be kind of taking the reins a little bit more. He's throwing the ball really well, which everybody knew he could do. Devin Brown's throwing the ball really well. Coming out of camp, that's what we're hearing. He's playing really well. He's getting a lot of 1 snaps. Julian Sayin's getting in there a little bit. Will Howard is still getting those 1 snaps. For me, I think Julian Sayin, if he deserves to start, he should be starting. And the thing that I'm worried about is that Ohio State's going to play the politics a little bit. Like, hey, we're going to play to the boosters. The boosters gave us this X amount of money to go out and get a quarterback, a quarterback that it has experience, that is older to lead this team. And Will Howard ended up being that guy. And I'm afraid that he might not be the best quarter. And we don't know. And this is all speculation, but if he's not the guy, I don't want them playing him because they gave him more money. If that makes, I want them to play the quarterback that's going to win us more games. That's going to put us in a better position at the end of the season to win a national championship. So if Julian Sayin's that guy, by all means, put him out there and let him, take his bumps early, because we want the best product at the end of the season. So I don't want them, flip-flopping halfway through the year, and then they decide, oh, let's go with Julian. He has no experience. He hasn't been able to make those mistakes early in the season. And then it's, we just lost a season. So yeah. I think we're going to learn a lot this spring game, which is going to be fantastic, because I don't remember a time where we had this much talent at the quarterback position and the position was open. This is like very open room. I mean, we had a room with Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow, and we've had good quarterback room, but we have 5 guys that could all have an argument for starting quarterback this year. So best guy, put the best guy in. I don't care about the money. And I hope they end up doing right by the best player in the room.
Absolutely. Someone said Brown has been getting the 1 snaps.
Yeah.
So Devin Brown has got. Let's get something straight here. Devin Brown's gotten reps with the 1s. Will Howard's gotten reps with the 1s. Lincoln Kienholz has gotten reps with the 1s. Julian Sayin has gotten reps with the 1s. And I see someone say, where are you getting your sources from? If you follow 24/7 Sports on Bucknuts, if you subscribe to the podcast with Berm, Austin Ward, and Bill Landis, if you are following On 3 Sports Network with Alex Kleidelman, Matt Parker, you can get a lot of information. Like, if you listen to those shows, you can get a lot of information. So
those guys are on boots on the ground at every practice, and they're the ones taking notes, and then they feed it back to the forum. So it's a really good source to kind of get behind the scenes, because a lot these practices aren't open. So media only, and it's a very strict media list to get into those practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's been rumors even today, and it's not, by the way, it hasn't been confirmed, and it's not a surprise though at all, that Iowa is speaking with Lincoln Kienholz. That's not a shock to me. I mean, Lincoln to me is the most likely to transfer. We had the opportunity to interview him last year. Great kid. Give him he deserves an opportunity to start somewhere, because I think he's got talent. I just think he still just needs reps more than anything else, and I just don't know if he's going to get them here unless in the spring game he just absolutely comes out and lights it up, and we're like, oh, well, this must be the guy. But listen, I mean, there's going to be a lot of tampering. There's going to be endless tampering, and we talked about the portal opening next week. The portal's been open the whole time. Guys are tampering. We're seeing it everywhere. It's what it is. But one more thing on Julian Sayin, his release, JD. Like, and I'm not just saying this to try and like be like, oh, he's going to be a Heisman Trophy winner, all this. I'm not here to say that. His release, though, as a true freshman, someone that should be graduating and not even setting foot on campus really until June, his release is an NFL level release of the football. Like, that's not what he's doing when he releases that ball is not something any other quarterback on this roster can do. That quick release that's not normal. They're only special quarterbacks get a ball out as quickly as Julian Sayin. And if you look at Sayin, the biggest knock on him is the size, okay? That's right. What the same thing was with Bryce Young. I'm not here to say it's Bryce Young. The comparisons are there. Bryce Young is a little bit more athletic, there's no doubt. I'm telling you, if Julian Sayin, if he can throw the football the best, I understand they might want to run some more read option. They want to incorporate that a little bit more. Well, that's why you bring in Will Howard, another reason why. Yeah, dude, if Julian Sayin can throw it around the yard like the reports are, I don't know how you set the guy. I know he's a true freshman. I know it's a risk. Like, Ryan Day wants to risk his job on a true freshman. If he gives you the best chance to win, how do you not roll with that? How do you tell him, okay, you're going to be the backup this year? That's another great question real quick I have for you on the quarterbacks. And then I do want to get to one piece of recruiting news that's huge that came out today. I proposed this question on Twitter, and some people kind of missed the point with it. I think you'll get it, though. Who's more likely to be the backup quarterback for Ohio State this year? Will Howard or Julian Sayin?
Who's more likely to be the backup?
Yeah.
The true freshman.
I think so, too.
And I think you briefly touched on it, and we've talked about it on the show. Is Ryan Day willing to risk everything for a true freshman quarterback? And that was the argument before we went out and got Will Howard, and we just had a room of Devin Brown, Lincoln Kienholz, and Aaron Noland, because we were kind of tossing up the idea maybe Aaron Noland wins the job as a true freshman. And then we add two more guys to the room, and now we're having this conversation of maybe the true freshman Julian Sayin is better than all four other guys. So, I think Will Howard will win the job. I think he will be the starter this year. But by God, he better be the best option we have at quarterback, because I don't know what we're doing if he's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be quite a situation if that's not the case. But again, we'll find out what happens there. I did want to get to one piece of recruiting news because it's a pretty big piece. And we'll give some more recruiting updates here once the portal opens, the spring game happens, we learn about a lot more official visits, so on and so forth. The top receiver in the country is currently committed to LSU, and that's DeCorian Moore. Why am I telling you this? Well, DeCorian Moore is going to visit Ohio State this week. Ohio State, keep in mind, DeCorian Moore visited them a couple weeks ago. That was just by himself. He's visiting with his mom on Saturday, like this weekend. Why is that a big deal? Well, DeCorian Moore it, by all accounts, is going to flip from LSU. That's been pretty well established here the last coming months. I mean, he's visited Texas a number of times. He's going to visit them again, even though that's his home state. But he's visited them a lot. Oregon's in the mix for him too. JD, Brian Hartline might do this again. The big thing with DeCorian Moore is getting like his mom going this weekend is a huge deal because there are a lot of parents that are hugely involved in the recruiting process as they should be. That's their kid. There are a lot of players though that normally like they take the lead with the process. This is one where DeCorian's mom is really being the one that's reporting on this process. She's the one reaching out to On3. She's the one reaching out to Rivals, 24/7 Sports. You can see it in the articles. It's a big deal getting her to campus. And the other thing we found out that LSU reported, he was supposed to compete in a 7-on-7 tournament this weekend. And he is not participating in that to go to Ohio State. The other reason that's interesting is because Burr mentioned last night on Talking Stuff, a lot of players are doing the opposite. They're canceling visits to play in 7-on-7. The question I got to ask you, man, do you think Ohio State comes away with DeCorian Moore? I wasn't saying this a couple weeks ago, and I still think as of right now, as of this minute, Texas is still the favorite because I just think mom, the home state, I think that really plays into it a lot, and the opportunity to get a guy like Khalil Lockett, another 5-star in Texas, to potentially them all playing with Arch Manning next year, I think is intriguing. But, man, I'll admit – I feel a lot more encouraged now than I did a couple weeks ago, especially with getting him on campus in this short amount of time.
Yeah, I think you also hit that one on the nail. You know, his mom being involved in the process, she's coming up with him for the spring game, which is a spectacle. I mean, I don't think anybody quite does it like Ohio State. We're going to have a nationally televised spring game, which is absurd. And then it's probably going to be a packed house. I can't imagine they sell out every seat, but you can imagine there's going to be at least 60,000 people there, which is, you know, the same amount that First Energy State or Cleveland Brown Stadium can hold. So not too shabby for a practice. And I think just getting him on campus for that is a win in their book. And now it's just going to be up to the coaches and the players to sell him on Ohio State. But I think once he steps on campus and sees that atmosphere and sees what spring football is about, I think it might be a little bit. We might hear some good news after the spring game.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you, dude. I mean, he is legit. And again, LSU fans don't want to hear it, but I'm just here to be completely honest with you and upfront. He is on flip watch. I mean, I saw On3 Sports saying he was going to flip to Texas after that visit last weekend. So there's a lot riding on this visit, and you kind of
wouldn't be taking visits. He wouldn't be taking visits if he wasn't reconsidering his options.
And he's gotten down to Texas and some of these other schools a lot more than LSU recently too. Like there are guys that, I mean, Ohio State, like Naheem Alford, 5-star corner commit. He's been committed for a while. He's going to take some visits, but he even said in an interview, like he's going because they're there. Like he's committed. The only official visit he has is to Ohio State. Now the official visits are where things are really interesting for recruits. If someone has an official visit, that really shows the interest a lot more. If you see committed guys taking official visits, that's when, if you're a Buckeye fan, if you see a Buckeye commit take an official visit elsewhere, that gets a little interesting. But keep in mind, these recruits are paid to take these visits. Like, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. So I will admit, another big visitor this weekend. I'm not going to mention all of them just because, again, it's a long list and we don't have time to mention all of them. The other big one this week is going to be Jonah Williams. He is a 5-star athlete, and Ohio State has had a lot of interest in him for well over a year. Some say he wants to play a little safety. He's listed as a linebacker. I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But Jonah Williams is a really good football player. He's been crystal ball to Oklahoma for a long period of time. The big reason that Oklahoma might stand out is he wants to be a 2-sport athlete. His brother was drafted into Major League Baseball. he's a really good baseball player. He wants to play baseball and football. Something to keep an eye on there with Jonah Williams. So big weekend, of course, recruiting for Ohio State. We'll talk a lot more about that here next week once we get some more clarity on some things. But JD, as we're wrapping things up, man, again, it was a great show tonight. There was a lot to talk about. Do you have anything else you want to add just as we're wrapping things up?
Yeah, I mean, we're not playing Rutgers this year, so I might be cheering off on the side and rooting them on because they've just been horrible my entire life. So other than the Ray Rice years, they were kind of solid, but recently they haven't been super great. So probably gonna give them a nice little cheer. Hope they can knock off some teams like USC and UCLA. That'd be fun.
Oh yeah, that'd be really cool to see. I think I'm gonna be rooting for them too. Those programs when a program in the Big Ten, when they struggle for a while, especially a team in like Rutgers situation, I'd like to see them do well. I mean, I'll be honest, I'd like to see Nebraska do well.
Yeah,
I think that'd be cool for Nebraska. I mean, because that's a historic program. If they can turn it around under Matt Rule, I think that'd be huge for the Big Ten.
It just makes the Big Ten better. If
Exactly.
all those teams are playing well and their programs are strong, then the football is better. Everything's better. The competition, and then you get rivalries, and then that just is what makes college football the best. So, we got to see these boys succeed.
Absolutely. As a reminder, guys, drop a like on that video tonight. Subscribe if you are brand new to the channel, on the push for 3,000 subscribers. Can't get there without your help. Again, it's completely free, and it really helps support us. So really appreciate everyone that tuned into this episode of the Scarlet and Gray podcast. We will be back next week. As always, go Buckeyes.